I never imagined the worst betrayal of my life would happen on a hospital bed, under blinding white lights, while machines beeped softly beside me and my body shook from pain I couldn't control. The night before my emergency surgery, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my hands resting on my stomach as my twins slept in their cribs back home. They were barely 2 years old, everything in my world revolved around them. Every decision, every sacrifice, every exhausted morning and sleepless night was for them. And yet, in that moment, when I needed my family the most, they decided I was a burden. The doctor had been blunt. My condition couldn't wait. There was internal bleeding, complications that could turn fatal if delayed even a few hours. I remember gripping the edge of the bed, my voice shaking as I asked the one question that mattered more than my own life. What about my children? The doctor hesitated, then said gently, you need to arrange care immediately. You'll be in recovery for days. I called my parents first. I always did. No matter how strained things had become over the years, I still believed, stupidly, maybe, that blood meant something. That when it truly mattered, they would show up. My mother answered on the third ring, already irritated. I could hear music in the background, laughter, the sound of glasses clinking. When I told her I was in the hospital and needed them to watch the twins, there was a long pause. Then she sighed like I had asked her for something unreasonable. You always have drama, she said. Can't you find someone else? Your father and I have plans. I swallowed, trying to stay calm. Mom, this is emergency surgery. I might not even, I stopped myself, afraid to finish the sentence. Please. Just for a few days. That's when my father took the phone. His voice was cold, distant. We already bought tickets. Your sister has been excited about this for months. You can't expect us to drop everything. I didn't understand at first. Tickets, to where? To a concert, my mother snapped, suddenly back on the line. Taylor Swift doesn't tour every year. You're being selfish. Selfish. The word hit harder than the pain in my abdomen. I looked around the hospital room, at the 4 in my arm, the nurse watching me with quiet concern. I'm asking you to watch your grandchildren, I whispered. I could die. My mother laughed. Actually laughed. You're not dying. You just want attention. You've always been like this. Ever since your sister succeeded, you've tried to compete. That's when my sister's voice chimed in, smug and amused. Honestly, you should stop acting like the world owes you something. 2 kids, no husband, always struggling. You're a nuisance. A burden. I ended the call without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. In that moment, something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but deep enough that I knew it would never fully heal. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the wall and realized I was completely alone. The nurse asked if someone was coming for my children. I said no. She offered to call social services, temporary care, anything to help. That's when survival took over. I called a nanny service from my hospital bed, gave them access to my home, my bank information, emergency instructions, everything. It cost more than I could comfortably afford, but none of that mattered. My twins would be safe. That was all that mattered. Before they wheeled me into surgery, I made another decision, one that would change everything. I logged into my banking app, my fingers steady despite everything. For years, I had quietly supported my parents and sister. Paid their bills. Covered emergencies. Funded luxuries they pretended they earned themselves. They never asked where the money came from. They never wanted to know. They just took. I stopped it all. Every automatic transfer. Every recurring payment. Every silent safety net they depended on without gratitude. I didn't announce it. I didn't warn them. I just ended it. As the anesthesia took hold and the world faded, the last thing I remember thinking was not anger or fear, or even sadness. It was clarity. They had chosen a concert over my life. They had chosen comfort over their grandchildren. And from that moment on, they were no longer my family. When I woke up, the first thing I felt wasn't pain, it was silence. The kind of silence that presses down on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. The surgery had been successful, the doctor said. Successful enough that I would live. Not successful enough that recovery would be easy. Tubes were everywhere, my body weak and unfamiliar, like it no longer fully belonged to me. I nodded as the doctor spoke, but my mind was already somewhere else, at home, with my twins, wondering if they were crying for me. The nanny sent pictures that first night. My babies asleep, clutching their stuffed animals, unaware of how close they had come to losing their mother. I cried then. Quietly. Not because my parents had abandoned me. Not because my sister had humiliated me. I cried because I finally understood something I had spent my entire life refusing to see: love, to them, was always conditional. During the next few days, my phone stayed silent. No calls from my parents. No texts asking if I survived. No message from my sister pretending to care. It hurt less than I expected. In a strange way, it confirmed everything. They weren't worried. They were busy, posting photos, smiling for cameras, living the life I had quietly financed for years. Then, 3 days after my surgery, the messages started. It began with my mother. Did something happen to the bank? I stared at the screen, heart steady. I didn't reply. Minutes later, my sister. Hey, my card got declined. Fix it. No, are you okay? No, how are the kids? Just entitlement, wrapped in annoyance. By the end of the day, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls. Angry texts. Confused voice notes. My father finally left a voicemail, his tone sharp with irritation rather than concern. You need to correct this mistake immediately. Your mother is embarrassed at the hotel. That was when I smiled for the first time since waking up. I waited. Not out of cruelty, but out of certainty. I needed to be sure this wasn't an accident, that I wasn't reacting emotionally. But with every message, every demand, every insult disguised as frustration, the truth became clearer. They didn't miss me. They missed my money. 2 days later, I was discharged. Weak, slow, still stitched together, but alive. When I walked into my house, the twins ran toward me, laughing, arms outstretched. In that moment, everything else faded. I held them, breathed them in, promised myself silently that they would never grow up believing love had to be earned through suffering. That night, after putting them to bed, I opened my laptop. Not to cry. Not to rant. To prepare. You see, my family had always believed I was the struggling one. The single mother. The disappointment. The one who didn't marry well, didn't brag, didn't show off. What they never bothered to ask was how I managed to live comfortably without their help, how I paid bills early, why I never panicked about money, why I always seemed calm when things went wrong. Years ago, after my divorce, I built something quietly. No flashy announcements. No social media posts. I invested, failed, learned, tried again. I started small, consulting, then partnerships, then ownership. By the time my parents started needing help, I had already crossed 7 figures. By the time my sister mocked my life choices, I was negotiating contracts she wouldn't understand. And every dollar they enjoyed came from me. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. I knew before I opened it. My parents stood there, tense, forced smiles plastered on their faces. My sister was behind them, arms crossed, eyes sharp with judgment. Not a single one asked how I was feeling. My mother pushed past me and looked around the house. You look fine, she said. So what is this about the money? I didn't invite them in. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "You chose a concert over my life. This is the consequence." My father scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. Families help each other." I laughed softly. "You're right. They do." My sister rolled her eyes. "So what? You're punishing us because you couldn't handle being alone for a night?" That's when I looked directly at her and said the words that would change the balance forever. I wasn't alone. I had people who were paid to care. Just like you were. Their faces shifted, confusion flickering beneath the anger. "You think the money just appears?" I continued calmly. "You think it comes from nowhere?" My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, doubt crept in. "I'm done," I said. "No more support. No more pretending. No more access." They left furious, calling me ungrateful, selfish, cruel. My sister swore I'd regret it. My parents said I was destroying the family. But as the door closed behind them, something inside me felt lighter than it had in years. What they didn't know, what they couldn't imagine, was that this was only the beginning. Because 2 weeks later, when the legal notices arrived, when the debts surfaced, when the truth about whose money they'd been spending finally came out, they wouldn't be knocking to argue. They would be knocking to beg. 2 weeks later, the first official letter arrived. Not to me, but to them. I didn't know the exact moment my parents realized what they'd done, but I imagine it was quiet. Not dramatic. No shouting, no instant collapse. Just a slow, sickening understanding as papers were opened, numbers were read, and names they didn't recognize appeared where mine used to be. You see, cutting off their cards was only the surface. What I had really done, what I had prepared for during those long nights in recovery, was pull my name out of everything I had quietly carried for years. The house they lived in? It wasn't family property. It was owned by a trust. The cars? Leased under a company I controlled. The monthly allowances? Direct transfers from accounts that no longer existed for them. And the debts, credit cards, loans, investments my father had bragged about making, those were all in their names. Mine were gone. My phone rang non-stop that day. I didn't answer. The next day, my sister showed up alone. No parents. No attitude. Just fear. She stood on my porch, eyes red, makeup hastily wiped away, confidence completely gone. "You did this on purpose," she whispered, not accusing, realizing. I looked at her calmly. "I did this to protect my children." She shook her head. "Dad's furious. Mom hasn't slept. They're saying you betrayed us." I almost laughed. "They left me on an operating table and called me a burden." She swallowed hard. "They didn't think it was that serious." "That," I said quietly, "is the problem." She tried to bargain then. Apologies she'd never practiced. Promises she couldn't keep. She offered to make things right, to convince them to apologize, to fix the damage. But the damage wasn't financial. It was final. When she realized I wasn't changing my mind, something broke behind her eyes. "So that's it?" she asked. "You're just cutting us off?" "No," I replied. "You cut yourselves off. I just stopped bleeding." She left without another word. 3 days later, my father called. His voice was different. Smaller. The man who once lectured me about responsibility now sounded like someone standing at the edge of a cliff. "The bank wants answers," he said. "They're talking about foreclosure." I closed my eyes for a moment, not in guilt, but in acceptance. "I can't help you." Silence. "You're really doing this," he finally said. "Yes." "What about family?" he asked. I answered honestly. "I chose mine." He hung up. After that, everything unraveled quickly. The house was listed. The cars returned. The lifestyle they flaunted evaporated almost overnight. Friends disappeared. Invitations stopped coming. My parents learned what it felt like to be ignored, dismissed, treated like an inconvenience. No one knocked on my door again. Months passed. My body healed. My twins grew. Our home filled with laughter instead of tension. I stopped checking my phone, stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Therapy helped. Distance helped more. One evening, as I tucked my children into bed, my daughter looked up at me and asked, "Mommy, are we poor?" I smiled and kissed her forehead. "No, sweetheart. We're safe." And for the first time in my life, that felt like wealth. I don't know where my parents are now. I don't know if my sister ever understood. What I do know is this: losing them didn't ruin my life. It saved it. Because the moment I stopped begging for love from people who only valued me for what I gave, was the moment I finally became free.